My name is bMaJuH, and welcome to ECL In Focus, the brand new show here on Sports Gamer that is dedicated to keeping you up to date with all of the latest happenings, scores, standings, and storylines, as well as highlights going on throughout the ECL, specifically our top four leagues in the core division, the Lite division, the Pro division, and the Elite division. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into things. We will start out with our standings in the core division, and our Group 1 standings tight as ever. As you can see on your screen, HC Krobka taking that number one spot at 18-5-1 record with 37 points, tied identically in terms of wins, losses, overtime losses, and points with the number 2 team in Hanover Indians Esports. Not a massive difference between the two when it is HC Krobka who just barely squeaked past Hanover Indians Esports for that number 1 spot. And you also have to give a lot of love to North Sawa Lions, 18-6-0, 36 total points, just found themselves 1 point shy of being a part of that tiebreaker and 2 points shy of actually taking that number 1 spot in group number 1. And we go all the way down here to the thick of the playoff race, and things got rather interesting from 5, 6, 7, 8 all the way down to around 9, as it was Warheads at that 8th spot to take the last playoff spot in group number 1. And it was a little bit of an interesting situation for Warheads. They came into this week with games in hand over Koke Esports, who were holding that number 8 spot. They played Koke Esports in the final week of the regular season, and give Warheads credit, they may have not been in the best situation that they would have liked to have been in going into the week, but you know what? They took advantage of their circumstances, having the game in hand, playing a team that was ahead of them that they needed to get points on, because Koke Esports were ahead of them. As we mentioned, only 6 points ended up separating these two teams at the end of the regular season. Warheads having 29, Koke Esports having 23, so Warheads going 6-2-2 in their last 10 games, while Koke Esports going 2-6-2 in their last 10. That right there was the difference in Warheads finding themselves into the playoffs. So give a lot of credit to them for getting their way in, doing what they needed to do, and finishing the season out strong to get themselves into the playoff tournament next week. Now we'll take a quick look at group number 2, where it was Cheeky Grinders who really didn't have too much trouble towards the end of the season securing that number 1 spot. A 22-2 record, 42 total points, 5 points ahead of the number 2 team in Predators. And you look at this Cheeky Grinders team, what more can you say about them offensively? 5.29 goals for per game. They are the only team in the entire core division scoring more than 5 goals per game. They're one of the highest scoring teams in that metric, not just in the core division, but throughout the entire ECL. 5.29 goals for per game. Absolutely insane. And you look at the special teams, they've been just as amazing in those areas as well. A 32% power play, a 97% penalty kill. I mean, this team, if you want to talk about championship favorites, I think Cheeky Grinders, they have to be right at the very top potentially of that list. They may not have had as much competition in their group as, say, some of the teams in group number 1 did, or some of those top teams especially, but when you're playing as well as you have, like the Cheeky Grinders have been, and you have the talent that they have, you're scoring the way they have, they are arguably the championship favorite, definitely one of in that conversation. And we'll kind of take a quick look here at the rest of the standings. Things getting rather interesting in the playoff race for those final few spots. It was really from 7 all the way down to 12 that things were rather shaken up, so to speak, or had the potential to be shaken up. Black Hurricanes ended the season on a little bit of a slide, 1-7-2 during their last 10 games. Really got scary a little bit for them with some of those teams at that bottom part not being too far away from them in terms of the total points, but luckily a few of those teams that were below the cut line dropped a few games. Black Hurricanes, the work that they did early on in the season, just enough to push them through. But boy, oh boy, if you're Black Hurricanes, you have to not necessarily be a little bit concerned, but you have to kind of be thinking, hey, we got to turn this thing around and get our game going. Playoffs, we cannot afford to play the way we did in those last 10 games, and they're going to be a team that's interesting to look out for. A lot of times we talk about teams that are playing on a positive note going into the season, maybe getting hot and playing their right hockey at the right time. You mentioned Warheads being one of those teams. Black Hurricanes, the opposite end of that stretch, winning just the one game. I mean, you do the math, that's just 4 total points that they accrued in their last 10 games. And if some of the teams from 9 all the way down to 12 finish the season off a little bit better themselves, they could have been on the wrong end of this playoff hunt. So luckily for them, they were able to do what they needed to do early in the season. That pushed them forward into the top 8, but they're going to be a story to look out for here going into the playoffs. And Omri Esports clinching that number 8 spot, 10-11-3 with 23 total points. Went 5-4-1 in their last 10. Maybe not a spectacular record, around that 500 range that you typically want to see most teams aim for, but nevertheless, they did exactly what we needed to do. Like we said, some of the teams that were in the hunt but were below the cut line didn't play particularly well in the last 10 games of their season. You see 4-5-1, 5-5-0, 3-7-0, 4-5-1. So none of the teams that were in the playoff hunt for the last few spots necessarily showing off, so to speak, in terms of their latest run of form. But if you're Black Hurricanes, if you're Omri Esports, you did exactly what you needed to do to get yourselves in the playoffs. Now, everything in the regular season, it doesn't matter anymore. You are focused on your task at hand in the playoff time. It's a brand new season. You never know what can happen. Going to be a lot of fun to see how those two teams fare, as well as some of our other teams in group number 2 that made it into that top 8. Now we'll take a quick look here at our skater stats before we wrap up our core division coverage, and look no further than HC Krupka, the number 1 team in Group 1, has the number 1 goal scorer and point getter in Lord Komar, 93 total points, 50 total goals for, also had 43 assists to his credit, and he's a guy that, he's the great example of, you have top players, you're typically going to have a top team. I mean, 7 more points than the second spot in the MMTS 90, who had 86 points. And, you look at Komar, he's been phenomenal this season. One of the really important pieces to that HC Krupka team. You see his teammate there at that number 8 spot in Super Kiro with 73 points so far on the season. And like we said, top players typically play on these top teams. And another example of that, Cheeky Grinders. Look at 4, 5, and 6. Eki Fuka, Yerdatagos, Toninen, all 3 forwards for Cheeky Grinders with 81, 80 points, and 78 points, respectively. And, speaking of Cheeky Grinders, you take a look at the defensemen, the story's no different there. Tiger Backwoods and OG Parenzo, number 1 and number 2 in points for defensemen. Both of them play for Cheeky Grinders, and for Tiger Backwoods especially, such an impressive run for him. 48 points during the regular season and 24 games played. So this is a guy averaging 2 points per game. Absolutely absurd what he and OG Parenzo are doing on the back end. And OG Parenzo, who's tied for that second spot with Charlie O, he's 11 points back of that number 1 spot, and that is no knock on him whatsoever, but just showing what Tiger Backwoods in his defensive partner is doing back there. Has 9 goals to his credit as well. Doesn't lead all defensemen in goals. That would be Rizbe 85, who was 4th in the league in points, and for defensemen 1st in goals, but nevertheless, that defenseman pair in Tiger Backwoods and OG Parenzo for Cheeky Grinders really showing out. And we talked about Cheeky Grinders being the highest scoring team in the core division. That is showing up in the stats, and it shows us not just the 3 forwards getting the job done, the 2 defensemen on the back end at that blue line really pitching in and contributing to what has been the core division's best offense throughout the regular season. We'll take a quick look here at the goalies before we wrap up, and someone that has really caught my eye and I think could be the best goalie that we've seen so far in the core division, House Pro. 20 games played, 15-3-2 with an 88.28 save percentage and a 1.6 goals against average. He's the goaltender for EHC Ulton Esports, who I'll talk about a little bit here after we go through some of the stats for House Pro, but he's a guy that has just been absolutely phenomenal this season. You take a quick look at some of his stats throughout his career. Just a few ECL seasons, played a little bit in ECL 12 here in the core division, was around a 70 save percentage, definitely not the best rookie debut that he would have hoped for. Played in the core division, again, limitedly during the ECL Winter 22 season. Didn't play during the spring campaign, but he has been a breakout star here during the ECL Winter 23 season with EHC Ulton Esports. And the 4 shutouts to his name, that 88 plus save percentage that we talked about earlier, the 1.6 goals against average. He has been a star for EHC Ulton Esports. And I told you we'd talk a little bit about EHC Ulton Esports. If you're looking for a team that might be flying under the radar a little bit, I would look exactly at them. 15-6-3 during the regular season, 33 total points. They kind of get drained out a little bit from group number 1 because they finished in 4th. There were so many top-heavy teams in that group with HC Krupka, with Hanover Indians Esports, with North Sawo. This group was just really stacked, really in the top 4 or 5, but EHC Olden Esports, the thing that really impresses me about them, their play on the back end, obviously House Pro has been phenomenal, but 1.92 goals allowed per game as a team. That is the best mark in the entire core division. And as a matter of fact, as you take a look at it with me here, not one team is allowing less than 2 goals per game other than EHC Olden Esports. So they're a phenomenal team defensively. They've been great on the special teams as well, at 31% power play, which is also one of the top numbers in the league, the second highest power play in the entire core division. And then you also take a look at the penalty kill being at really close to 89%, 88.89. So you round it up, that's around 89% on the PK. So they're a phenomenal team defensively. They have a great power play team on both the power play and on the penalty kill as well, that's been able to defend well. They're 7-2-1 their last 10 games, so they're playing well down the stretch, and they're a team that's battle tested. They had to play those teams that were in the top 3 that really have a chance to win themselves a championship. Look out for EHC Olden Esports. I think they're a team that maybe not everyone has their eye on specifically, but very well could push and surprise a few people in terms of being one of the championship favorites. Now we'll take a quick look here at how things are going in the Lite division. As the Lite division, a little bit more interesting, not necessarily just in terms of the players and the teams and the playoff races and the stands going up and down, but in the fact that you don't just get 2 groups with the Lite division. You get 4, double the fun in the Lite division, as we will take a quick look at all 4 groups to see how things shaked out here in the regular season. As we'll start out with Group number 1. Gunner HC taking that number 1 spot with a 21-3-2 record, 44 total points. Really have to fight their way to get that number 1 spot. Project X being a team they kind of got in contention. Technical Disaster, a team that was in contention. And Skelefty AIK, also a team that really kind of snuck their way in there late. They were on a hot streak that you would not believe on. How about this for them? Skelefty AIK have not lost a game in the new year. The last game they lost was on December 28th. That is right. It's January 18th when we're recording this. They haven't lost the game since December 28th. So you're looking at 3 weeks since this team last lost a game. They lost that 8-0 game, the Resurrection, and boy, oh boy, they did not take kindly to that at all. They've been on an absolute tear. That is a team that really has their role going here at the latter stages. Could be a team to look out for here in terms of being on the right way going in the playoff time. Another team that's doing the same thing, Project X, they have a 10-0-0 record in their last 10 games and have been one of the best offensive teams in the entire Lite division, averaging 4.69 goals per game. We're just outside of that number 1 seed in group number 1 with Gunners HC. Look out for Project X to be a team to really step up. I think they would definitely be considered one of the favorites to come out of this group in terms of that final and in terms of winning that championship. Project X, definitely a team to look out for. Is the last time that they lost a game, you look at their schedule, haven't lost since January 2nd. So teams like this that have proven to be able to play well against high quality teams, have proven to be able to win close games, an ability that every team needs come playoff time. And like we said, a team that is really, really trending on the upward in the right direction. You haven't lost a game in over 2 weeks. More times than not, that momentum has a good chance of carrying its way over. We'll move on to group number 2 here as a 6-6 Misfits that will take the number 1 spot in a tiebreaker with Prati Shumatov Esports. Both teams with 23-2-1 and have 47 points. 6-6 Misfits, 4.77 goals for per game, averaging just around 2 goals allowed per game. One of the better numbers that you will find in both of those statistics in the entire Lite division. Also playing well as of late, 9-1-0 in their last 10. Prati Shumatov Esports really in the same boat, but the difference with them, they're scoring at a higher pace. 5.5 goals for per game. I mean, you look at all the rest of the teams, there's no one close to that number for them. I mean, they are just dominant on the offensive end of the ice. There is not a team that's even close to that number. Really, Project X probably the closest team you could say between them and 6-6 Misfits, but Prati Shumatov Esports, unrivaled. Quick look here at the last few teams that got into the playoffs. DEG Esports getting 29 points, finishing at 6th. Sololanch, 13-11-2 with 28 points, and Trojans, 12-11-3 with 27 points to cap off the regular season. And Trojans, they were an especially interesting case, a team that maybe could be a sneaky one to look out for, maybe knock down one of those top seeds in one of our 4 groups. They finished 8-1-1 during their last 10 games of the regular season. That hot streak is really what pushed them through over teams such as Punakala. And you have a team that's playing that way down the stretch of the season. You never know how that momentum can carry forward, and they may be able to surprise someone down the stretch. So Trojans, maybe a team to look out for if you're looking for a team that may not necessarily upset one of the top seeds. They could, you never know. This is playoff hockey, but definitely a team that could compete and push the issue a little bit further to a 6 or 7 game series, as some may not expect them to do based off of their seeding. We'll go take a look at group number 3 now, where Hunters finish at that number 1 spot, a 21-3-1 record with 43 total points. Weren't really rivaled too much in terms of the points. Prestige were right behind them with 4 points, at 18-5-3 record, at least not rival compared to a couple of the tiebreakers that we saw in some of our other groups. But nevertheless, Hunters looking really, really strong so far, averaging over 4 goals per game. The only team in this group that's averaging over 4 goals per game. They're doing rather well in their own as well, averaging a neat 2 goals per game in their own end. So a team that is in that number 1 spot, well earning their number 1 spot this season. You see Prestige right behind them, Neptune Hockey right behind them, EHC Clothing Esports right behind them. That battle for number 2 was where things were especially interesting for the most part, rather than for that 1 spot where Hunters really locked things down and put themselves in a good position going into the last week of the season. But something I think that really caught not just my, but a lot of people heading into the last week, the race from 7 all the way down to 11. Armada Hockey and SCB Esports both get into the playoffs, a 12-10-4 record for both of them. Each of them had 28 points in the standings, and they needed every single one of them down the stretch. Just 1 point separating them between 7 and 8 in that number 9 spot where Sune IK Esports find themselves. They finished 12-11-3 with 27 points. A disappointing result for them. Really looked good there towards the end of the season, maybe pushed their way into the playoffs, but it just goes to show you every single point in the regular season makes a difference. They matter. They had the same amount of wins as those 2 teams above them, but that 1 regulation loss compared to an overtime loss being the difference that may have been able to push them forward towards a tiebreaker situation. So Sune IK Esports so close, but just a little bit too far out to get themselves in. Ghost was another team that was in contention. Golden Sticks, another team as well that looked like they might have been able to push through. And for Ghost, especially with the way they ended the season, 6-3-1 in their last 10 games, looked like they may have been able to make a run if things rolled the right way in terms of teams in front of them sliding down the standings. Unfortunately for them, enough did not happen for them to find their way in. They finished in 10th in group number 3, just a little bit outside of the top 8 playoff spots. Finally, we'll cap it off here with group number 4. Sototarje SK getting the number 1 spot in group number 4, breaking the tiebreaker with Vizio. Both teams finishing with 38 points. Sototarje SK, 19 wins, 5 losses, no overtime losses, so all their losses being in regulation. While for Vizio, 18 wins, 4 regulation losses, and 2 overtime losses. Sototarje SK getting that tiebreaker over them. And don't really underestimate that number 3 spot. Team IK Esport just outside of contention for that work. Just 3 points out, finished 16-5-3. Could be a team that slept on a little bit. They are a phenomenal team, especially on the penalty kill, 95.45%. That's one of the highest marks that you will see here in the Lite division. Could be a team that you could look out for, could maybe surprise some people in group number 4. Maybe not playing their best hockey down the stretch compared to some of the other top teams, but nevertheless, if they get things rolling, you know they have the defense. You know that they have been rather battle-tested in what was a deep group number 4. And speaking of a deep number 4 group, you see it in the standings from really 4 all the way on down to 9. Just 2 points separating each of those teams. I mean, if you're Ultimatum and you tell them at the beginning of the season, hey, you're going to finish 4th in your group, I think that they're feeling pretty confident that they're going to make the playoffs with relative ease, probably a few games over the good from where they would be at that cutoff line. But like we said, it just goes to show you why every point matters, because if Ultimatum drops the game here or drops the game there, they go from the 4th spot potentially all the way down to 9, where Ulun Salo HT currently sits just 2 points separating the 4 seed and the 9 seed in group number 4. And I know that it might not flash in your eyes in terms of the point tallies and some of the stats on your screen, but groups like this can be the groups that surprise you come playoff time, because they're battle tested, they have a lot of depth, and typically these teams can just kind of pound each other and beat each other up throughout the regular season. But when they kind of get away from each other after that regular season, they surprise some people in the playoffs, because they have been so battle tested. They have played playoff caliber teams that didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, Ununsalo Esports were a playoff caliber team, but just were not able to get in, being just 2 points outside of that number 4 spot, 1 point outside that number 7 spot. All of these teams in Group 4, keep an eye out for these teams if you're looking for a sleeper to maybe make a big run that are around the 4 to 5 range in their group, maybe in the teens or the low 10s, around 8 or 9 in terms of where they're seated for all the playoffs. Look out for the teams in Group 4. They're battle-tested. They're all really solid defensively. They don't allow a lot of goals on their own end. If you're looking for a sleeper pick to maybe make a run, Group 4 could very well be where you find it. Now we will take a quick look here at our stats for skaters and our points leader for the regular season, and by a pretty large stretch, Bigsby 23 on Prodati Shumatov Esports, 115 points. You did not hear that wrong. 115 points for Bigsby 23, 45 goals, 70 assists. I mean, just dominant this season. And you take a closer look here at Bigsby this season. He has just been amazing. 115 points, as we mentioned, easily his best season of his ECL career. He's an interesting case. He came from the Lite Division team, and Lausanne HC Esports had 56 points in 28 games during the Spring 22 campaign. Didn't have any playoff action, unfortunately, but he comes over to this Prodati Shumatov Esports team, and he's just been nothing short of spectacular. So the left winger for this team in Shumatov Esports, or Prodati Shumatov Esports rather, absolutely phenomenal. I don't think there's a forward that has been really close to his point tally so far this season. I mean, you just look at the difference between him and Lamza at that number 2 spot. 18 points. 18 points separating number 1 and number 2. And Lamza had a 97-point season. Bigsby had 21 more points than his own teammate, who had 94 points in Wincy. So it just goes to show you how dominant of a season this was. And if you really want to see how big of an impact he had, 115 points for Bigsby alone, his team scored 143 goals. That is how much he impacts the game for his team offensively. He is going to be a lot of fun to watch come playoff time. And he doesn't even have the most time with possession of some of these high-end scorers, just a little bit over 100 minutes of time with the puck this season. So it's not like he's hogging it. He's just making plays, man. And you respect guys like that that can really make plays for the team, not just in terms of scoring the puck, but dishing it to their teammates as well, having those 70 assists. And we'll take a quick look, as we mentioned, on the goal-scoring crown. Wincy and Jesse L. 2002 tying for that with 51 goals. We talked about Prodati Shumatov, one of the top goal-scoring teams in the league. Wincy leading that with 51 points. Not surprising whatsoever. This team in Prodati Shumatov, they will be a team, I think, that pushes for the Pro Series, or excuse me, for the Pro Division next year. And he has some experience in the Pro Division, was with Wiethoofd in the Spring 22 campaign, put up 48 points. So we know he's a guy that can put up points in that division. But obviously, he's doing it in droves in the Lite Division. And Prodati Shumatov Esports could very well be a championship contender because of his play. And Jesse L., another guy that's interesting, he played in the Pro Division last year as well, but with Reality Check. Reality Check made it to the final last season, just lost to Voxio Lakers. They are now in the Elite Division. Jesse L. didn't follow them to the Elite Division, came back down with his old team in Project X that he played with for a while. Definitely safe to say that decision has paid off for him. 89 points in total, was in the top 5 in the Lite Division in points. He's been a guy that has been one of the more consistent scorers and one of the consistent point getters, really, at whatever level he has played out. It is going to be a lot of fun to see how he and Project X do. We talked a lot about Prodati Shumatov Esports, but Project X also one of the powerhouse offenses here in the Lite Division. Take a quick look here at defenseman. Solani leading all defensemen in points with 40. The only player really that had that 40-point mark, but after him, a lot of guys really stepped up. Lama with 37 points, Jobo with 37 points. Really even numbers here through a lot of the defensemen. And you're seeing the guys on the back end stepping up, contributing on offense. A few guys for a lot of these high-end teams finding a way to do that. And then lastly, for the goalies, you're seeing once again that 80 to 85 save percentage being that mark that we're seeing for a lot of players really stepping up so far this season. You see the leader in save percentage in terms of a lot of games played. I think it's got to be Yaku. We talked about Gunners HC earlier. They have phenomenal defense, but they have phenomenal goaltending as well. Yaku, 86.27 save percentage, a 1.46 GAA for Gunners HC, and he was on that including me team for a while, made the playoffs with that team in the winter season, did not make it, unfortunately, in the spring season. He played rather well, but not near the numbers of what we are seeing from him this season. He has been on another level for this Gunners HC team. We talked about Gunners HC. They've been one of the best teams defensively all season long, allowing just 1.5 goals against per game. You look throughout the entire standings, there is not another team that has less goals allowed. The closest to them, from the looks of it, is Prestige with 1.96 goals allowed per game. Actually, Sodertalier with 1.54. So those two teams, Sodertalier SK and Gunners HC, the two better defensive teams, but Gunner HC allowing the least amount of goals in the league, being led by their star goalie in Yaku. So the goaltender stepping up in the Lite division. We know how important that is in the playoffs. Going to be a lot of fun to see some of these names step up here on the big stage starting next week. Now we'll turn the page over to the Pro division, where not only is the regular season done, but our playoff matchups are confirmed. That is right. Every single team has completed the regular season. 30 games played for our teams in Group 1, 28 games played for our teams in Group 2. The top 8 are locked in for each group, a pool of 16 teams, all vying for the chance not just to win the championship, but to find their way into the ECL's top flight for the spring 23 season. As we will go ahead and take a look here at our group number 1 standings. And how about bMaJuH? Absolutely phenomenal season for them. 24-3-3, 51 total points, just getting in that number 1 spot over Golden Knights on the last night of the regular season. That is right. You take a look at bMaJuH. They played the last 2 games of the regular season on January 17th. A 2-3 win over Luleå Hockey Academy, and then a 7-2 win over Luleå Hockey Academy. And it's interesting. Luleå Hockey Academy, just outside the playoffs, if they win those 2 games, could have very well gotten themselves into that final playoff spot over to Thornton with a tiebreaker going in their direction. But not able to do that. bMaJuH being the benefactor of that, getting that number 1 spot over Golden Knights. And bMaJuH, they were a team that were in the playoffs last year, didn't really have the run that people expected them to or were hoping that they would, but they came back this season with an absolute vengeance. They've scored a lot in this season. They've shown they can score. They've been great on the defensive end. The one concern you may have with them this season, if you have to choose one, is that penalty kill percentage. 57.89% PK. That's something that's a little bit concerning. If they get themselves in penalty trouble, no other team has a worse penalty kill percentage than bMaJuH. So it's kind of interesting to see the best team in group number 1 that's going to have a top seed in the playoffs be so poor on that end of the ice when they've been a man down. So they're going to have to avoid penalties. Luckily for them, haven't taken a ton of them. Just something to look out for. Nevertheless, bMaJuH, a great team, doing a good job getting that number 1 spot in group 1. Right behind them is the Golden Knights, a 23-3-4 record with 50 total points, just barely missing out at that number 1 seed. But give Golden Knights a lot of credit. This is a team that missed out on the playoffs last season in spring 22. They came back with a vengeance, played absolutely phenomenally throughout the season. And similarly to bMaJuH, they are playing some of their best hockey at the tail end of the season. Both of them went 9-1-0 during their last 10 games. So fun to see stories like this where teams miss a season ago, come back, stick with it, maybe make a few changes during the regular season to improve on things and find their way where they were not a season ago. And Golden Knights, they're going to be a fun offensive threat to look out for. 484 total shots on that. They're a team that loves to put the puck on. They've done so well. That's going to be a really key thing to look out for in the playoffs, where you try to get those quality opportunities. Not many teams have been better at doing that this season than Golden Knights. Some of the teams also right behind them, Edinburgh Hockey with 48 points, a 23-5-2 record. They were always in that top end. We're competing for that number 1 spot for a while. Weren't able to finish the job, unfortunately, with the way that Golden Knights and bMaJuH finished off the season. And Djurgården Hockey, another team that missed the playoffs during the spring 22 season, ended up finishing 4th, a 26-4 record with 44 total points. Give them a lot of credit. They've had a really interesting story arc. They made it to the Elite Division in the Winter 22 season after winning the Pro Division beforehand in the season before. They get relegated after finishing 16th. They're back in the Pro Division for Spring 22. Everyone thinks that they'll compete and be a team that might be able to get themselves back in, and they miss the playoffs. They come back, they stick with it, made a few slight changes, but kept a decent amount of their core, and yet here they are, back in playoff contention at number 4. Really, really fun to see some of these teams that missed out in the last ECL season competing not just for some of these high-end playoff spots, but being considered teams that could very well make a run and get their way into the Elite Division. And if you're Djurgården, their way back into the Elite Division. That would be so fun for them to see happen. Going to be a team to look out for out of Group 1 come playoff time. Before we wrap up Group 1 here, we'll take a quick look here at the playoff race for a couple of the last spots. Really, it was that 8th spot that was the one in real contention. The Torrid holding that 8th and final playoff spot, locking themselves in a 17-10-3 record with 37 points. Gifu Hockey just on the outside looking in, 15-11-4 with 34 points. They barely missed the playoffs in the Spring 22 season. We're just on the outside looking in after being in a tough group. They find themselves in a deja vu situation just like they were in Spring 22. Barely missed the playoffs in a tough group, just on the outside looking in, and unfortunately having to watch from home during the postseason. And Lite Hockey Academy, even more of an interesting story. 15-12-3 to finish the regular season with 33 points, just missing out on the playoffs. And it's especially disappointing for them because if you look at the right-hand part of your screen, I'll highlight it over here for you, 1-8-1 in their last 10 games. This is a team that I think a lot of people 2 weeks ago would have had penciled in to make the playoffs and maybe even penciled in to be in that top 4 with Djurgården, with Edinburgh, with Golden Knights, with Biabro. They were a high-scoring team at 104 goals, were phenomenal and dynamic on the offensive end all season long, but unfortunately, a really, really tough stretch to end the season. In their last 2 games against Biabro, unfortunately dropped both of those, and it just sees them on the outside looking in. So the defense not really where it needed to be. 90 goals allowed in total. The goal scoring on the offensive end, not enough to pull them through. Lite Hockey Academy, unfortunately, on the outside of the playoff picture after what was a really promising start. Going to be interesting to see how they do here next season. A disappointing end for them, but nevertheless a solid regular season despite not being able to make it into the big show. Now we'll go into Group 2 where Rennescore takes the number 1 spot. That is a team that plenty of people are familiar with in the Pro Division. Rennescore has been at it for a while, and once again, they are a contender here with some of these top championship teams. 21-5-2 in the regular season with 44 points. Right behind them, Nemesis, 18-5-5 with 41 points. And this Group 2, it's interesting. A lot of teams that we're familiar with, teams like Rennescore, Nemesis, Visu Gaming, Herlev Eagles, Deadly Phantoms. Then there's other ones that were promoted from the Lite division, from the core division, that are just getting their feet wet here in the Pro Division that many would think it's going to take them some time. Maybe they'll compete for a playoff spot, but they probably won't be a championship contender. Here we are at the end of the regular season, and Ik Oskarshamn is 3rd in Group number 2, 18-7-3 with 39 points. Phenomenal in Group number 2 was Ik Oskarshamn. I think that they are probably one of the more quietly fun stories that we are seeing here in the Pro Division, as well as Memento, who were phenomenal coming up from a lower division. 17-9-2 for them with 36 points. They ended up finishing in 6th. Just some of these teams that were promoted from the Lite and core divisions really showing themselves out here in the Pro Division. I think it just goes to show you that we saw a lot of teams go from Pro to Elite last season. It left some room for some teams from the core division, Lite division, to earn their way in through the Pro qualifiers, and we're seeing teams take advantage of that opportunity. Teams like Ik Oskarshamn, teams like Memento. I think even a team like Valco and Bastu, who may have not made the playoffs, but were rather impressive during the regular season, were always in contention to make it into that top 8, despite being just on the outside looking in. That was the story to me in this Group number 2, how many new faces we saw really step up. And we saw a few of them as well in Group number 1, but Group number 2, really where we saw a lot of that new fresh blood here in the Pro Division really shine, and some of those teams could be very well the ones to look out for. Imagine if a team finds a way to win it all in their first season in the Pro Division. Ik Oskarshamn, one of the teams to definitely look out for in that conversation. A few other teams that could be very interesting stories heading in. Deadly Phantoms, one of the other more experienced teams in the Pro Division, a 7-3-0 record in their last 10. They were on the outside looking in during the halfway point of the season at a really sluggish start, but nevertheless, they find themselves in the playoffs. They get themselves in. They're playing good hockey. They were upset really early in the playoffs last season. They have a chance to rectify that. It kind of goes to show you that the playoff scenes don't always matter. Deadly Phantoms are going to look to do what was done to them last season and find themselves a nice little playoff run here with a higher seeding. Just on the outside looking in, Arkham Asylum with 32 points, Valco with 31 points, and Bostu with 29 points. It was Bjorklöven Esport that got the last playoff spot, a 15-9-4 record with 34 points. They've also been one of the hotter teams in the Pro Division, 8-2-0 record in their last 10 games. So you're seeing some of these teams that kind of have to scratch and claw for their playoff rights, really playing well down the stretch. Could be a storyline here to look out for as we get towards the playoff picture. And speaking of the playoff picture, we've got it for you. We promised it. We told you we'd have it. We have it right here on your screen. You see the matchups right there. bMaJuH versus Bjorklöven Esport. That's going to be a really fun match with the way those two teams have been playing as of late. I'm going to kind of just go through a few of the ones that might be interesting and could be ones to look out for. Ik Oskarshamn versus Leksands IF. That's going to be one that's going to be a lot of fun. Edinburgh Hockey versus Memento. Another team that's going to be interesting to look out for. And Golden Knights versus Deadly Phantoms. Two teams that have been around for a long time here in the Pro Division. Going to be interesting to see how that goes, because this is a Deadly Phantoms team that may be the 7th seed, but I think that they are a team that has the quality and roster and lately have been playing like a team that could be a 3 or 4 seed. So a tough test early for the 2-seeded Golden Knights. And one more series I think that really stands out to me, Visu Gaming versus Arctic. Those are two other teams that have been around in the Pro Division for a while. A few players on that Arctic team familiar with the Visu Gaming squad, so going to be a lot of familiarity between those two teams. They have battled a couple of times over the last few seasons. I think if there's a series that could be really tight and potentially go to 7 games, that Visu Gaming and Arctic matchup, very well the one to look out for. We'll take a quick look here at the player stats here before we wrap up for the Pro Division. I want to give a few of our players here some love for their efforts. The leading goal scorer, Rempe, with Edinburgh, had 86 total points, also had 54 goals, led the league in both of those tallies, while the leader in assists, Rakus Pakas, 44 total assists for the bMaJuH 4. We talked about how good bMaJuH was this season, especially on the offensive end. Rakus Pakas, one of the biggest reasons for that. Also, amazing plus 42 as well on the season. Some of the defensemen that really made waves, MCH with a phenomenal 50 points during the regular season, 40 total assists, 10 total goals scored, 12 more points than the second highest point getter, which was Poland 16 on Ace Hockey. Ace Hockey, a team that didn't make the playoffs, but it's always fun to see some of these players on these non-playoff teams that competed well all season get their credit and get their due. Ace Hockey, a team that was making a rather large jump from one of the lower divisions into the Pro Division, played rather well during the early stretch of the season, unfortunately tailed off at the wrong time, found themselves a little bit outside the playoffs, but Ace Hockey, we all kind of knew it would be a team to look out for, a team that was going to have to adjust to play a really fun play style. It's very up and down, it's very fast paced. They competed throughout a lot of the season, unfortunately didn't end the season the way they would have liked to, but nevertheless a good building block for Ace Hockey, finishing 12th in Group 1 and having a player in Poland 16 that really contributed and was one of the best defensemen throughout the entire Pro Division. Last, we'll take a quick look at the goalies. SV1, one of the top goalies in the league for bMaJuH, 24-3-3, played every game for this bMaJuH team, a little bit over an 85 save percentage of 1.73 goals against average. A few other goalies that really stepped up, Kosti, Sumax, Strandmanen. I mean, the list goes on and on. Sweet Suki Maestri, another guy that really stepped up for Edinburgh Hockey, an 84.42 save percentage for him. I mean, so many guys. How about Lillebror stepping up in a big way for Leksands? An 86.5 save percentage, an 18-9-3 record. Absolutely phenomenal what he was able to do this season. Definitely one of the breakout guys. And this Leksands team, that was a team that also got their way in through the pro qualifier. It's been a common theme throughout the season. Teams that earn their way in from lower divisions, stepping up, making big things happen. That is exactly what this Leksands team did, and it was led by one of their best players in their goaltender in Lillebror. Let's take a moment to watch some of the highlights here from the ECL Elite this season. Some of the best goals, the nastiest dangles, and maybe some of the funniest plays and blunders that we saw this season. We're always seeing something from the ECL Elite that's exciting. No shortage of that here with this highlight package right here. Up with one big stake. He's going to have to probably come up with a few more here in the last 32 and a half.
Net empty now for Växjö. They want everything. So over to the goaltender, and it goes in! Oh, it's being waved off! The initial off a monkey head. He was slightly out of position here.
Oh, that's a tough call.
I'm not sure why it's being waved off. There was maybe a bit of contact at the end.
Yeah.
At the end right there, but that puck to me looked like it was already headed towards the back of the net. That's a rough one. Yep, now. Stops with a high point. Shot on from Johannes, and he gets it! He gets it! The puck don't fly! Mr. Allsvenskan, the extra attacker on the backhand, ties this one up for the Extra Lakers, and we should be headed to overtime right here. What a sequence for the Extra Lakers to pull the goaltender and be rewarded.
In the real-time final 2 minutes. Achin gets it to Melgus around the back of the net. One-timer on angle, rebound! What a save by Eli Kamel! It looks like Melgus had the winner. I don't know if we have time for a replay on that, but my goodness, what a stop by Eli Kamel. What a stop by Eli Kamel. Television 18-0-2 on the season. On pace to be our number 1 seed heading into the playoffs. 9 games left after this one. One more game against Nordic Stars. What a goal to win the game! Hat-trick hero in overtime. Leitinen seals the deal. And Tunnel Vision certainly continuing on that number 1 seed pace. What a way to win it.
Remember to use the hashtag ECL23 clips to submit your best, worst, or even funniest moments of the season on social media. We're looking at community-generated content, so if you want to be a part of this, you want to see your big goal, your big hit, maybe something that's funny, or maybe something that was a little bit of a slip-up that caused the whole squad to laugh, and you want to share it and get it out there with the community, make sure to use that hashtag ECL23 clips, and your clip could very well be featured on one of our next episodes. Last but not least, we have our ECL Elite Division. We'll take a quick look at the standings, some of the key players that we saw throughout the season, as well as a couple of storylines to look out for. But we don't want to go too in-depth because, remember, our ECL Elite playoff preview, our amazing friend and colleague Tugi24 going to be hosting that, giving you everything that you need to know about what went on in our ECL Elite Division, prepping you for the playoffs. As the ECL Elite playoffs are always so fun, so many storylines to look out for, so many players that really could make a difference, especially this season with how much we saw really trend up and down. A lot of new faces and new teams this season that are breaking in. Tugi gonna have all of that and more for you on our ECL Elite playoff preview, so make sure you tune into that. Keep your eyes peeled on Twitch, keep your eyes peeled on YouTube, as well as on our social medias for updates of when we have that up and ready. But for now, we'll give you the appetizer, Tugi will give you the main course and the entree, but we'll start you out here with just a couple of tidbits about the Elite Divisions. We'll take a quick look here at the standings. How about that number 1 spot? Tunnel Vision, 25-0-3 with 53 points. They have 28 games played. H-Reds being behind them with 30 games played, 50 total points. Nothing H-Reds can do to knock Tunnel Vision off of that top spot of the standings. Congratulations to Tunnel Vision. I mean, they have been a team on a tear this season. Lost that heartbreaking Game 7 in the finals, in the ECL Elite Finals last year, the live event in Helsinki. What a series that was, and Tunnel Vision, a team that came out on a mission this season, and they have been nothing short of phenomenal. No easy task to knock off H-Reds. They've had to be near perfect to do it, and I mean, you see the losses, 0 losses in regulation. That is as close to perfect as you can possibly get. I would love to know from some of our ECL historians and some of the people that have been around a little bit longer than I have, how many teams have gone the entire regular season without losing a game in regulation. I mean, I can't imagine many, if any. Tunnel Vision, just 2 more games in the regular season. If things pan out for them the way they have been so far, could very well be one of the first teams, if not the first team in the history of the Elite Division to not lose a game in regulation. Absolutely impressive for them. Congratulations to them on that number 1 seed. A couple other interesting teams. You're not going to get into too much, but you kind of take a look really quickly here at some of the teams that are just on the outside looking in. Found Coal Miners just on the outside, as we mentioned. A little bit better of a finish than last season, where they had to get their way back into the Elite Division due to relegation series. Found Coal Miners going to be in that no man's land of not making the playoffs, but at least they know that their Elite Division spot is secure. And they also had that big new deal with the Red Hawks announced a few days ago as well. So congratulations to them on that. Roots Gaming just on the outside looking in. They were projected to finish last in the season preview. They were projected to be the 16th team. They weren't close to that. 13, 14, and 3, 29 points, were in the playoff hunt at the very end, just not able to do enough down the stretch to find themselves in the big dance. But nevertheless, Roots Gaming, safe from relegation, could very well be safe from even having to play in the relegation series. It's going to be interesting to see how they do during the offseason. Really disappointing result for Laleya Hockey. You look at their roster, there's a lot of familiar names on this team. Terodi, Yakurdi, Eli Kemo. This is a team that we've seen for a while. Picardi, Nape. I mean, these guys were in the playoffs last year. If you recall, this was Edinburgh Hockey last season. They were at that 4 or 5 seed in the playoffs. They were also Poggers back in the day as well. This is a team that we've seen accustomed to competing for playoff spots. Unfortunately for Laleya Hockey, not in the cards, never really able to find their rhythm, and unfortunately next season will have to try to find a way to earn their way back into the Elite Division. Quick look here at some of our stats leaders before we wrap things up here on the Elite Division side. Benito, the leader in points for 85. This isn't something we're unfamiliar with seeing, am I right? I mean, Benito, one of the best players that you will find here in not just the Elite Division, but arguably throughout the world. 85 points, 37 goals, 48 assists. He's a leader for this H-Reds team. Phenomenal every single season for them, and even at the face-off die, he's been amazing. 56 face-off percentage so far this season. He's playing well defensively, 84 total takeaways. He is really the ideal two-way centerman that most teams dream of having. Another just brilliant season from the H-Reds captain, and the leading goal scorer for the Elite Division this season, Lite for television, 48 total goals for. I mean, he was just in a class of his own for the goal scoring department. 11 more goals than the next leading goal scorer, which was ironically enough Benito, who had 37. So Lite for tunnel vision. We talked about how great tunnel vision has been. Lite leading the charge there for them in the goal scoring department. For some of our defensemen, Wenger for tunnel vision with 45 points. Sockham with Yano having 43 points in 30 games played. He's a guy that I think has flown really under the radar so far this season in the Elite Division. Yano, a team that's going to be in the playoffs. Sockham, a guy that I think really should get some consideration for Defenseman of the Year. Last, we'll take a quick look at the goalie stats, where, no surprise, FaZe being one of the top goalies, a little bit under the 80 save percentage mark for FaZe. Not something that we're used to seeing from him. 78.3%. So interesting to see that. Not really expecting to see him under that 80 save percentage, but he's a guy to where he plays his best hockey when this H-Reds team needs him to. I have absolutely no doubt that that number will continue to rise as the playoffs move along. He's always stepped up for this H-Reds team when they have needed him come playoff time. Expect him to be a bit higher, and I wouldn't be shocked if he was even north of 85% with the way he steps up at the biggest stage of the season. Unique on television with another phenomenal season. Finsete playing really well for Reality Check, an 86.23 save percentage. I think that right now, if I have a vote, I think Finsete might be the goaltender of the year for this Reality Check team. I mean, I remember covering him a little bit with Reality Check in their 2 seasons in the Pro Division in both Winter 22 and Spring 22. And the guy has always been a stud. You look at his Pro Division stats, at 83.83 save percentage in the Winter 22 season, followed it up with an 84.33 in the playoffs. Then in the next season, Spring 22, an 82.3 save percentage and 84.2 in the playoffs. And then now in the regular season for Elite, the numbers are better than what they ever were for him in the Elite Division. This guy is an absolute wall. Like I said, if I have a vote, I think Finsete has to be your goaltender of the year. A lot of worthy goalies. We mentioned Unique. I mean, Hanselino, definitely another guy that could be up there, an 83 save percentage. But to me, Finsete, with the way Reality Check has played this year, the stats that he has, don't underrate the 5 shutouts this season, by the way, as well. It's actually, if I'm correct, tied for the most in the league with FaZe. It is. It just goes to show you, this could be a guy that very well wins goaltender of the year. Finsete, really impressive on Reality Check. Look out for him come playoff time. He's always stepped up his game for his Reality Check team. Going to be interesting to see if he can do so at the ECL's highest level with Reality Check now being in the Elite Division. That'll wrap things up here for our coverage on ECL In Focus. But before we let you go, a few important announcements and reminders that we want to share with you. Firstly, our ECL 23 Winter Finals and our 6v6 E-Hockey World Finals are going to be played live at Assembly Winter 2023 in Helsinki, Finland on February 24th and February 25th. And for that 6v6 E-Hockey World Final, it'll be the ECL Elite Champion versus the NACL Champion. The champion of the NACL flying to Helsinki from North America to play the ECL Champion. If you want to be there for the action, we have got you covered here at Sports Gamer. If you have an ECL player license, you can get a ticket for half the price. Just fill out the form for ECL 23 player license holders to receive a discount code. Otherwise, simply purchase your ticket directly from assembly.org, and we will hope to see as many of our community members on location at Assembly Winter 2023 for the event. I'm telling you, if you can make it out, this thing is going to be an absolute blast. You are not going to want to miss it, so make sure you take advantage of that discount code. Additionally, ECL spring season just around the corner. You want to make sure to get all your ducks in a row. You want to make sure you have everything in line. And Sports Gamer is offering the opportunity for teams to apply for a team sponsorship. Fill out our team sponsorship form with some key information about your team and tell us why your team should be selected. We will have information for that form if you're watching on YouTube with the link down below in the description. Speaking of the spring 23 season, if you don't have a team yet, you can apply for one here using our form in the link down below. We'll be running a few newcomer teams at the start of the next ECL, and if you want to try to improve, if you're new to the NHL community and you're having a little bit of trouble finding a team, no worries, we might have something here with this form that interests you. Just fill out that form with some basic information about yourself, and you'll have a chance of being picked for one of our ECL 23 newcomer teams where seasoned ECL veterans will help you get up to speed if you want to get into this competitive field, if you want to be a part of this amazing community that we have here at Sports Gamer with the ECL. Click on that link down below to fill out that form. But I'll do it here for our first episode of ECL In Focus. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Make sure you check out our amazing sponsor in Covenant Locker for all their support of the ECL, not just this season, but throughout the years. If you want to keep up with everything Sports Gamer on social media, make sure you follow us from Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at SportsGamerGG to keep up with everything going on, especially if you want to catch our live streams of some of our coverage throughout the ECL Elite and Pro. You can catch us on twitch.tv/SportsGamerGG, or if you can't make it live, no worries, we've got you covered with highlights on our YouTube channel. If you want any more information on anything that we covered here on some of these announcements, or maybe something we didn't cover, make sure you go to our website at sportsgamer.gg. For myself and everyone behind the scenes at Sports Gamer, this is bMaJuH signing out our first episode of ECL In Focus. Thank you guys for watching, and best of luck to everyone in the first round of the playoffs.